Hello people. So less than 2 weeks to go for the exams, or I could say less than a month for the exams to get over. So if I would be you, I would prefer to follow the second timeline of less than a month for exams to get over, because that is totally more motivating. So if I ask you today, how's the feeling knowing the fact that exams are so near? So probably this is a question I shouldn't be asking, because people would because generally when people are asked with this question, they freak out, they go into a panic mode and really stress over themselves. But what I want you to do is sit back and think of the time when you thought of doing CA, when you went out to fill your CPT form, you submitted the form, you gave CPT, you cleared IPCC, you went for articleship, those long articleship hours, sitting for due dates, then sitting for long hours in the classes, managing office and classes, taking your study leave, studying every day for almost say 4 or 5 months, and every day putting in 8 hours, 10 hours, 12 hours. Some people also have gone as high as 15-16 hours. So you have really put in so much of time and effort, and here you are standing at the last step, because once you clear this exam, you will really earn the title that you have been working so hard for. So you are at the last step, and I want you to go back and think of all the efforts that you've put in from that time till now, and all the sacrifices you've made. Because isn't CA about all of this? Putting in all the time and effort and sacrificing on your plans, friends, family, for what? For this day, for these exams, and so that you can clear and really earn the CA tag. So I want to ask you, don't you feel you have earned it? Don't you feel this is the time for you to become a chartered accountant now, because you have already done whatever it takes? So don't you feel that you're worthy of becoming a chartered? And people giving only one group, don't you feel that it's time you get closer to your goal of becoming a CA? So ask this question to yourself and listen to the answer. If you've been true to yourself, if you've been true to your studies, you've put in all the efforts, I'm sure deep down the answer is going to be a yes. And the simple question is, if you are not going to believe in yourself, then who is? So if you got the answer as yes, why are you really stressing out? Why are you second guessing yourself or doubting yourself? Maybe, like, I am not saying all of you all are doing that, but majority of the people, because even I've been through that phase, and I've seen friends who have gone through that phase and have really lost their self-confidence in these last few days. Even though they have put in all the work and the effort, they have studied how much they need to, still they don't have that confidence, which is saddening, because they have paid their dues and they have earned the right to sit at the table, to be called a chartered accountant. I want to emphasize that during this last 1 month, your mindset and your attitude is really going to be an important and a deciding factor. If you've seen my earlier videos, I've always said revision is important. But even after revision, this stage is the most important and crucial stage, giving the exams. Because irrespective of whatever you have done, you have revised a lot, but after that you need to perform. You need to go in the exam hall and you need to write, and you have to show it to the examiner in those 3 hours that yes, I've earned it and I have it in me to become a chartered accountant. What you do in these last few days, in the last 1.5 days gap between those exams, will determine how are you going to play out in those 3 hours in the exams. And these 3 hours are going to be the deciding factor for your last 4 to 5 years. This was not the case in IPCC, because in IPCC, after clearing, yes, you are going to be a step closer. But in final, this is the end. This is where it all ends, and where you earn it, where you achieve your dream. And it is up to you what you do in those 3 hours. Whether are you going to crack under pressure, or are you going to rise up and take what is rightfully yours? So if you also see that there are many people who are studying, like if some of you all might be going to libraries and you see people studying day in and day out, but many of them don't clear. And some of them are really eligible to, because I'm sure we all know people who are really eligible to and they deserve to pass, but they don't. So that also brings us to the point that academically they were strong enough to clear, their fundamentals were strong, but they just couldn't handle the pressure, because during the last 1 month it really counts in what mind frame are you, in what attitude are you, and how are you approaching the exams. And the thing is, many of us go very hard on ourselves. We try to curse ourselves that I had so much of time, I had 4-5 months, I didn't do this. मुझे ये पढ़ना था, मैंने वो अच्छे से नहीं पढ़ा, या मुझे पूरा क्वेश्चन 2-3 बार रिवाइज करना था, ये नहीं हुआ, वो नहीं हुआ. And till the last day, we are carrying that load with us. But I want to make you understand that now is not the time to carry that load. Because what has happened in the past, you can't go back and change that. So, like we've studied, that is a sunk cost. So don't waste your time behind that and focus on how are you going to approach your exams from now on. And that is possible only if you have a positive attitude. And definitely if you're going to keep thinking of the past that I didn't do this or this is how I screwed up, it is not going to help. So this is the time right from now till the last day of the exam that you feel good about yourself. You remember all the things, all the sacrifices that you did which got you closer to your goal, and not thinking of the things which you didn't do or which you planned to do and couldn't achieve. Also, there might be some of you all who might think that मेरा पढ़ के नहीं हुआ जितना पढ़ना चाहिए था एग्जाम पास होने के लिए, so इस बार तो पक्का पास नहीं होने वाला, this time I'm going to fail, so there's no chance, but still exam ऐसे ही दे देते हैं. So I want to tell you all that if you are in that zone right now, so you have anyways accepted that you're not going to clear. Instead, why don't you take a chance? Why don't you correct your attitude and you think of it in the right way that okay, I didn't get to study as much as I wanted to due to XYZ circumstances, but from now on I'm going to have a right attitude where I'm going to focus on clearing and I'm going to try till the last minute that I clear. Maybe even after this you might not clear, but having done this you will have the best shot at clearing because you are in the right mind frame. I'll tell you this thing. During my exams, till the last day I was studying the portion for the first time. I didn't really get the chance to revise anything and I was a week short. On 27th April during my exams last year, I knew that I still need one more week to complete my whole portion once for the first time. So there was definitely no chance of revising. I was in the same zone where I was constantly thinking what went wrong during the last 3-4 months. I could have done something in a different manner, and I was going really hard on myself, thinking I could have changed this a bit, done that, etc, etc. But that was really working against me because I was not able to use myself to the most optimum level. But then I decided that I am not going to fail, and May 2017 is going to be the attempt where I am going to become a chartered accountant, come what may. And it was really difficult for me to let go of all the mistakes that I did in the past. So I had to write on my phone's lock screen, I am proud of you, to make myself feel good and to remind myself that how hard I fought and how long and how far I have come. I decided to correct my attitude, and I want you all to know I cleared in the first attempt with a score of 448. And I didn't get any time to revise, but that's not the point. The point is that I spoke to myself and I tried to correct my attitude about the fact and let go of all the past mistakes that had happened. So this result couldn't have been achieved at all if I had stuck to it and if I had quit even before the exam, because if you are going to stick with that attitude, that is as good as quitting before the exam itself. And I need you to fight till the last minute of the last exam and not quit so early. So with this mindset, I want you to think for the next 1 month till the last day of the exam, irrespective of how any paper goes, because all the exams are independent of each other. So your success or failure of one paper should not affect the next paper. This specially applies in case of FR because FR is the first paper and it's a strategically important paper. Also, FR is generally a lengthy paper, and if FR does not go well, by saying well I mean does not go the way that you have planned, because definitely it's a scoring paper in group 1, so people let that affect your next papers, which shouldn't happen. Also, if you remember in my revision video I said we stop revising on 27th of April and from 28th of April we'll start studying for FR. And in that video I had said how to study for FR during the exam time is something I'll cover in a later video. So here I am doing that. So I've given 4.5 days for FR. That is again because it's the first paper, so it's really important. It should go well because it will boost your morale. So from 28th April to 2nd May we'll be doing FR, and over here the days that I've given, they are not fixed. You can shuffle between the days, but this is just a general idea about how much time it would take to comfortably complete the whole revision of FR. So I've given 2 days for accounting standards, Indian accounting standards, guidance notes. This will also include your accounting standards for financial instruments. Along with this, corporate financial reporting. Over here it will include your company final accounts, where there will be application of these accounting standards. Next we'll do amalgamation, and the day when you do amalgamation, with that you also have to complete half of valuation and value added service and human resource accounting. Now value added services and HRA is a really small chapter, so that wouldn't take much of your time. Then on the next day you need to complete the valuation part, and also with that do consolidation and complete your mutual funds and NBFC part. Again, your mutual funds and NBFC is a really small portion. On second morning, which is your exam day morning, complete ESOP. That should be the first thing you do. After that, if there is anything left in the past days, whatever you had planned, it didn't go as per that, or if some small portion is left, you need to complete that. After that you have to go through the RTPs of November 17 and May 18 at least. If you have the time, you can also do May 17, and with this it would be preferable if you also just go through the May 18 mock test paper questions. So for completing your RTPs and your mock test papers, you should take maximum 1 hour. There is another thing that I would want you all to do, which is in case of amalgamation and consolidation, you need to solve 1 to full-fledged proper questions, because generally we don't solve the whole questions while practicing or while studying. So, and obviously it would be beneficial if you have made 1-2 balance sheets right before the exam and you have actually made out the working, because conceptually the question might not be difficult, but while doing the steps you might miss out on something. So just so that you get the hang of it once, I would prefer you solve 1-2 full-fledged sums also during these 4.5 days. And the last thing over here which I've marked as folded pages is actually something that I would follow, which helped me. So obviously, even though I have read the whole portion in the last 4.5 days, there is a high possibility things which I have read at the starting of my revision during the first day. So say something that I have read on 28th, I might not recollect it as strongly as I need to, and there are some things which are very specific. So they are not really conceptual based, but they are very specific, which you need to reproduce as it is. So a small example can be, in case of construction contracts, the disclosure that you have to make in the financial statements, that is something that you would obviously prefer to see just some time before the exam. Because even though you know the accounting in case of construction contracts, you might not remember the exact disclosure. This might also apply in case of segment reporting. So for all these things where you need to see it just before the exam, where it will help you to remember it better, what I would do is I would identify these pages while I was revising the portion and just mark it and just fold the page from above. So on the last half an hour, I see the book, and in the book I just see at the top which pages are folded and I see what is there on that page, and within 10-15 seconds I just glance through it and okay, I know what I had to see on that page, and I am again in touch with it. This applies not only for FR but for all the 8 subjects, because definitely there will be something or the other which is preferable if you see in the last half an hour. So it is easier to reproduce in the exams. For FR, we are not really going to be under a time constraint for revision, because we've given a comfortable 4.5 days and it is easily doable. But what in case of other subjects? Because over there we are only going to have 1.5 days. So we have really less time, but we have to make the most out of it. So I'm just trying to quantify how much time do we have, and this is a method that I applied which helped me to yield the maximum efficiency out of the available time. So firstly, let's say if during our exams our paper will end at 5 o'clock in the evening. So let's say by the time you're home, you get fresh and all, it's 6:30. So 6:30 is when you get free after the exam, and you will maximum study till 1:30 on the next exam day. So 6:30 is on, say we have completed exam number 1, which is say FR. Now after FR you will give SFM on the 3rd day, and on that day you can study maximum till 1:30 in the afternoon. So this is your day 1. Day 2 will be blank. You will have the whole day to yourself, and on day 3, say you have your exam number 2. So let's say exam number 2 is SFM, and your 1:30 PM is till when you have time. Now if you see during this, you only have these many hours to study. This is the range in which you have to revise entire SFM, and this is going to be the same time frame for all the subjects. So you will see in this time you have a total of 43 hours. Now according to me, I needed 7 hours of sleep per day, and I think generally the average is around 7 hours. So assuming that you sleep, and during your exam time sleep is definitely important, because the exam is not of one day. The exam is going to go on for a period of 15-16 days. So you really need to be very sharp and attentive, and definitely if you have not slept enough, that is going to affect your efficiency. So assuming 7 hours of sleep into 2 days, so 14 hours. You will also have to take out time for dinner, lunch, breakfast, and you will also take a few breaks. So in these 2 days, let's say you give 2 hours for dinner, you give 1-2 hours for lunch, you give 1 hour for breakfast, and you take a total break of 2 hours in between studying, because obviously you can't keep on studying throughout constantly. So now if you add up all of this will give us 6 to 7 hours. So let's say also if we take it as 6 hours, so these are the 6 hours plus 14 hours of sleep, so 20 hours gone. So out of this, if you see, from 43 hours, 20 hours is something which we can't really make use of. So we are left with 23 hours. Also out of these 23 hours, there will be some downtime where you are really not effective, where your efficiency levels are not high. So to take a practical amount of hours, let's also take out another hour. So 22 hours is the average. So you have to revise your whole portion in these 22 hours, and it depends on what you do in these 22 hours that is going to translate how well can you reproduce your knowledge in those 3 hours. Also out of these 22 hours, the last 1 hour is something in which I am going to break this up into 2 parts. So we have these 22 hours over here. From this, 30 minutes is something where I will definitely go through the RTP of the current attempt and the last attempt, and after this 30 minutes is something which I will again give to my paper fold concept, which I just explained, that the things which I have studied just at the starting of my revision during the exam time, so the pages which I folded, which I need to see on the last day, so I'll give 30 minutes to this. So I have 21 hours to go through the whole portion, and the last 1 hour is somewhere where I am going to do these 2 activities. Now for people, the hours might vary. It might be lesser than 22 or more than 22 for people, but I am taking an average of 22. Now is the part which is going to make a difference. If you see, during the exam times, this you might also have noticed during IPCC, your efficiency levels vary. It won't be the same throughout these 22 hours. The point where you come from an exam, you are not going to be in the stress zone, you are going to be a bit relieved, and at that time you will want to take things a bit slow. So you won't go really fast, you won't go at your maximum speed. That day will go. Next day morning you wake up, you are still in the zone that okay, I still have time to study, there is still one day to go. Till afternoon the pressure might start kicking in, and by evening you really get freaked out thinking okay, tomorrow is the exam, I don't know, I have not gotten to study this much, and that is where your efficiency levels really pick up. That night you sleep, next morning when you wake up, you realize everything you study is going in very fast and you can cover a portion really very fast. Because by then you have realized that the exam is really very near and your stress levels go up. So what I want to do is I want to maximize my time during these last hours because there my efficiency levels are high. So what I practiced is one day before the exam, that night I would sleep for 4 to 5 hours and at that time I would study as much as I can. So let's say if I sleep at night by 2 o'clock, so next day morning I am up by 7 o'clock. So I have maximized my study time during this period. Now obviously next day when I come back from the exam, I am going to feel very sleepy because I have not slept well. So that night I would suggest you don't stay up till late. That night you study a bit for 4-5 hours, you eat your dinner and you go to sleep, and you sleep for the differential number of hours. So if I slept for 5 hours the previous night, so this night I sleep for 7 hours and the 2 hours differential, so today I sleep for 9 hours. So I am balancing out my sleep, and with that I am also dedicating some more time where my efficiency levels will be really high. So this worked out for me, it might not work out for people, so you need to think of your own strategy, but I think this helped me out because I had more time to study when my efficiency levels were high. But I just want to clarify, you really need to try to maintain a stable sleep policy, so you at least sleep for 14 hours, because if you don't, there are very high chances you might feel sleepy in the exam, or you might feel stressed out towards the last few exams, and that is something we can't afford. Also, before you go for the exam, during lunch, try to keep your lunch a bit light because you don't want falling asleep in the exam. Also, you can before the exam you can drink a can of Red Bull, it helps. You won't feel sleepy, but try to limit your count to maximum of 2 cans a day because it's not really good for your health. Also after this, when you go into the exam, what you do in the first 15 minutes, how do you plan your time is something really crucial. So in my first video I had explained the ABC method of marking, where you decide and strategize what questions to attempt, when and how, in which sequence. For people who have not seen it, I would really recommend you all to go and see it. It's in my first video. The exact time duration is 3 minutes 50 seconds till 9 minutes of my revision strategy video. Now I'll just like to speak on a few specific subject related things, because till now everything that we've been speaking is at a very general level. In case of SFM and costing and OR, it would be I always prefer to attempt only practical questions, because in theory I'm not going to score the same marks, but in case of practical questions I can, because over there is not much room for the examiner to cut my marks. But that also depends on if you know all the practical questions answers. If you don't, then anyways you don't have any choice and you will have to attempt theory. Also it depends on the time that you have available, because during my exam I clearly remember during SFM I had to attempt one last question and I had only 15 minutes left. So effectively I have to attempt 16 marks in 15 minutes, and definitely had I picked a practical question I wouldn't be able to complete it in that time frame. So hence I had to go with a theory question, because only that could be completed. So it also depends on the time that you have, but if you know all the answers, then it is preferable if you leave the theory and you attempt all the practical. In case of audit, I have already explained the whole audit strategy in the last video. Still, I'll just summarize it for you all over here. You don't need to give maximum preference to standards, because there are around 46 standards, and even if you take a minimum of 15 minutes per standard, that translates to around 11 and a half hours. As we saw, we have only 22 hours between two exams. So if you see you are going to give more than 50% of your time for something, but it's only going to come for 30 marks. And standards anyways is something where you can't be sure of scoring even 25 marks out of 30 because it is very subjective. So you have put in 50% of your time, in fact more of your time, but you are only scoring 20 to 25 marks out of 100. So which is somewhere around 20%. So I don't think it really makes sense. Instead focus on all the other topics and come back to standards at the end. And for standards give maximum, I'd say, a period of 3 hours. But don't leave standards altogether. I would say at least go through it once in those 3 hours. Before that, complete all the miscellaneous topics, your ethics, etc. The order in which you should study, I have also explained it in my last video. So if you have the time, you can surely check it out. In case of law, by now I am sure that you've understood that directors is not the only important part in law. It's important, but you can't focus your entire energy only on directors. You also have to give time to allied laws and all the other topics too. There were a few things more which I had to cover in the video, so I'll just cover them quickly. Also, please note that this segment of 3-4 minutes is for the old course and not for the new course. First is costing. We study standard costing and marginal costing first. This is a total wrong approach because of the fact, if you see, standard costing and marginal costing are two such huge chapters and they are not asked for that much marks. The weightage is not that much. The order to study on the last day for costing would be: first read chapter number 1, developments in business environment. The concepts therein are really easy and its application is also very easy and it comes for a good number of marks. What you need to do last is standard costing, marginal costing and transfer pricing, which is also known as internal pricing. By saying last, I mean it should be done even after you have done OR. The middle order of the chapters is totally upon you, and the major reason for doing standard costing, marginal and transfer pricing last is because their weightage is less. Secondly, the complexity is a bit more. Secondly, many people have this doubt, the practice manual of costing is really big. So how to cover the whole practice manual? In my opinion, you need to focus on concepts and not on sums. So you don't need to go through all the sums on the last day, but you need to go through the concepts and any typical sums. Even though I have told you to not do the PM, by saying not do the PM, I meant don't do section B, where the majority of sums are there. Only if there are any typical sums which you feel you need to see on the last day, go through them. But section A is the theory section. So it would be preferable if you can go through it in a very rapid fashion in 1 hour. And section C is really important because in the last question, question number 7 in the exam, they ask generally questions from section C. So in the last chapter of costing, in the practice manual, there is a concept balance scorecard. So also go through that because even that has come many times in the exam. Now with respect to ISCA as a portion is relatively really smaller than all the other subjects. So you won't need much time to revise ISCA. In fact, if you are efficient enough, you can complete one proper revision of ISCA with another second rapid revision of head points only. So try to do that, it will definitely benefit you. And anyways, I believe that you must have been reading ISCA every day for some time, for at least an hour. So by now it won't really be that much of a problem to remember ISCA. With respect to DT, I know I've been getting really a lot of questions about how to revise DT on the last day, but unfortunately I don't have a concrete answer to this because DT as such is a really very vast subject. It's an ocean. In DT, because of the time constraint, I think it would be almost impossible to also cover the practice manual questions. So you might only have to rely on the concepts. But I'm sure there might be many different approaches to DT, and there are many outstanding professors who have given their approach how to complete DT on the last day, or maybe the professors from whom you have learned, they might have some advice for you, so you can follow that. In case of IDT, there is not really much to add because now we don't have excise and service tax. It has all been consolidated into GST, and so now we just have GST and customs. With respect to case laws, I just want to clarify, it is not necessary for you to remember the name of the case laws. If you remember the flow of the judgment and you can apply it to the case and you can reproduce that in the exam, that is more than enough. So don't waste your time over remembering the names of the case laws. Also, one last thing, in the exam, before writing an answer, when you see the question, I want you to analyze it and structure the answer in your head instead of just starting to write, because it is necessary that you structure your answer well so that it appeals to the examiner instead of just writing what comes to your mind. Take that 1 minute and structure the answer in your head. After that, start writing it. Like if you see in law or in case of a tax paper, if you can quote a section in the answer, it would obviously be preferable to start with the section. So you can start with the section, explain the section, and then explain the case in a very short manner and apply the provisions of that section to this case. So when you start with the section, the examiner directly sees the relevant section being quoted in the answer. So that adds to your credibility. So that's it from my side. I tried to give you all the last day tips and tricks, the last day motivation that I could, and all the help I could. Let's hope this helps you out. So go out there and just kill it. All the best. Also, if you have any doubts, you can, like always, write to my mail ID avinashsamala7546@gmail.com, and I'll be sure to help you all out.